Okay, we'll get going. So we'll continue with chapter 4. Is Bill Smith. We'll continue with chapter 4. We had a break, 3 weeks. So we'll just do a quick recap of what chapter 4 was about. Where are my slides? So we saw the connection. We started the first chapter, Arjun's lamentation, observing the armies, and which ended with the second chapter beginning. He just surrenders to Krishna, saying that he doesn't know, he's feeling weak in the knees. And then Krishna explains a summary of the Bhagavad Gita to him. Then we come into chapter 3, confused by equivocal instructions. Arjuna is confused, and Krishna further expands upon it, explains to him what is to be done, what is not to be done. Then Krishna ends the third chapter by asking him to nourish his buddhi so that he can conquer lust, right? And to become exemplary in life. But then what is there to nourish the buddhi? And that's the transcendental knowledge which we are discussing in this chapter. And the acronym for this chapter is PAST, beginning with position of Krishna, which was the first approximately 10 verses, out of which the quintessential verse was Janma karma chame divyam evam yoveti tatvatah tyakta deha punarjanma eti mameti sarjuna. The one who understands my true nature, my birth and my karma, never come back to this world. So that's the transcendental knowledge we all are supposed to imbibe. Okay, what's the position of Krishna? The next aspect was application, how to apply the transcendental knowledge. Okay, and we during the A part, that's the application part, we read about karma, akarma, and vikarma. Those three were important aspects of that part, right? That how does all those three affect us? And how being in a state of akarma, we are not affected by karma at all, right? So that was the third part. Let's see, where was that? Okay, we did before that okay, so we also talked about Chaturvarnya Maya system, the four how the four varnas which have been created based on guna and karma, not on the basis of birth. Okay, and yes, so karma, akarma, and vikarma is what we were talking about. Prescribed duties, forbidden action, and akarma, which doesn't bear any material action. And how Bhagavad Gita teaches us three main points through these three principles: karma, vikarma, and akarma. So karma, by doing what is our prescribed duty, we become dutiful. By avoiding Bill Smith, I'm not sure who's Bill Smith. Can you please introduce yourself? Bill Smith? Vikarma is a forbidden action, so it teaches us how to be detached. And then finally, akarma teaches us how to be devotional in life. And that's the continuous theme of Bhagavad Gita, and the intensity increases as we move forward. When we continue to be dutiful and detached, the devotional aspect increases, and eventually Krishna asks us to leave everything aside. Sarva dharman parityaja, towards the end of the 18th chapter. So we read that, then 14, 18. Okay. So 18, 14, 18 was the word, right? Karmanya karmaniya pashid, karmani cha karmayaha. So Krishna was saying that how what is action and what is inaction. You have to know that, and it's very confusing. So Krishna is explaining that to Arjun. Okay, so that's where we captured up to, and so then so we. What else did we do? Okay, and then Krishna, that last verse before we did 23 was where Krishna ended by, he concluded his discussion of a yogi, karma yogi, and he said that the person is fully situated in transcendental knowledge, as we see in the verse 23, jnana avasthita chetasa, and then he's gata sangasya muktasya, that he is free from the material modes of nature, and then he was yagya achritaha karma, that he does all the activities as yagya, right? That's one thing that was important. That's the essence of this chapter, doing everything for doing everything as a sacrifice, as a yagya for Krishna. Okay. And then that's where we come on now to 24. Okay. So 24. Okay. So the 24th one is sorry, just going back to is now the sacrifice part, and how to gain that knowledge. So sacrifices. So this section is about sacrifices, different types of sacrifices. So we'll start with this now. Before I move forward, anybody had any thoughts around what we have done so far in this chapter? Anything that you want to bring out or you want to discuss before we move on to the next section of this chapter? No? Okay. So this is 24 now. Brahmarpanam Brahma Havir Brahmagnav Brahmana Hutam Dhammeva tena gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhina. A lot of Brahma here. So okay, right. So what do all these mean? There are 6 things in total that Krishna is mentioning in this. So the essence is that everything can be offered to Krishna. Okay. So how to apply the transcendental knowledge that we have remembering, how to apply it in our day-to-day life. A way to do is that by taking up spiritual practices and building a spiritual culture around us, around our lives. So we heard about being dutiful, detached, and devotional in whatever we do, right? So to give you an example, there are 3 people working on a building. There are 3 laborers working on a building. A new person comes and asks one of them what that laborer is doing. The first one says, "I'm laying bricks." Okay. Then that person goes to the second laborer, and he asks him, "What are you doing?" And then the second one says, "I'm building a wall." And then the person goes to the third one. Okay. And he says, "I'm building a temple for Krishna." Okay. So even though the first one was dutiful, he was not thoughtful of the purpose. Right? Second one was aware of the immediate purpose. Okay. But the third one was dutiful, and he also knew the purpose, right? So similarly, in our day-to-day activities, we all are doing so many things. We are cooking, we are studying, we are learning music. But what is our purpose behind it? This is what Bhagavad Gita offers to us, right? So this verse is a culmination of all the discussion we have had about transcendental knowledge, right? That whatever knowledge you have, it kind of concludes in a practical sense that you can use everything for Krishna's service. So I was in Kolkata. So Prabhupada's birthplace is in Kolkata. And in the last year or so, ISKCON has taken over that area, and they have built a good memorial for Prabhupada there. In one of the walls, there is a letter that Prabhupada wrote to his nephew, his aunt's grandson, when Prabhupada was about to leave this world in 1977, somewhere around May. Prabhupada wrote, well, no, he left in November, but he was writing this letter in May. And what he was saying is that he wanted to buy that land where Prabhupada was born, and he wanted to convert it into a memorial. Now that might sound a bit absurd to many people. And it might even, that's why many people doubt, oh, Prabhupada did this, he behaved this way, because they didn't understand the essence behind it. They didn't understand the purpose behind it. So when I read that letter, I was surprised. I said, why would Prabhupada himself want to build a memorial of his own birthplace? And I asked my spiritual master, who was taking us on that yatra, and my spiritual master told me that in a very crisp sentence that it's the service of an acharya to establish himself as an acharya. So it was a deep thought, and I had to think a lot about it, and I'm still thinking what that meant. But the reason I bring this up is that we all should know what is the purpose behind what we are doing. And that makes it more realistic and more practical for us. That's how we apply transcendental knowledge. So Prabhupada asking his own birthplace to be converted to a memorial was not to glorify himself, but was more to establish himself as an acharya. And so he was doing it as a service, even though it would have been painful for him, because he's a very humble person, a pure devotee who just doesn't want any glorification for himself. So it would have been very hard for him to do that, but then it was his service. So what I want to say is that whatever we do in our life, if we know the purpose behind it, if we are clear about the purpose behind it, then all our activities can be converted to a yajna to Krishna, yajna as a sacrifice that can be offered to Krishna. So that's what this verse talks about. And I just put an example here. I'm not sure if this is a perfect example, but I thought just to clarify what each of them things mean, right? So Brahma Arpanam. Arpanam means what something is offered. So if you look at an example, I put an example of a software programmer. So what is the software programmer offering? Is the act of programming. Okay, that's so his or her skill. Havi means is an offering. Havi actually means butter, but butter that's offered, so it's an offering. So what the programmer is, that he's the code that he writes, he's offering that, he or she. Agno is fire. That's the receptacle. It takes up the offering. So what is the taking it? The computer is taking up the offering from the programmer. The hutam, the act of offering, right? So where is he offering that code? It's in the software application. Right? So the act of offering is going into a bigger software application. And what is the result of it is that whatever his or her goal is of writing that code to make a good software or whatever it may be. And then when a person does all that in a consciousness that as a service, as a sacrifice, the person achieves a state of complete absorption, which is called samadhi in bhakti process. And then so when a programmer is fully immersed in coding, so he or she comes to a state of samadhi. So that's what this verse means, that everything, a person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. So everything becomes spiritualized if we know the purpose behind it, and I do everything as a sacrifice to Krishna. Okay, that's the purpose, right? So when one understands that Krishna's energy is present everywhere and is all encompassing, then we have a choice, right? So we can either use it as for a sense gratification, or we can use it for a spiritual purpose, whatever energy is available to us, right? But the higher purpose is to use everything for spiritual purposes. But then we also have this option of that we can use it for sense gratification. And when I know that and I see the spiritual purpose behind everything, then I have become, I have become liberated, and I'm offering everything to Krishna. Okay. And as we know, in Kali Yuga, chanting is the yajna process, right? In the 11th canto, there is a verse, 11th canto, 2nd chapter. Krishna Varnam Tusha Krishnam Sango Pangastra Parshadam Yagger Sankirtana Prayer Yajanti Hi Sumedhasha. That in this yuga of Kali Yuga, Krishna Varnam Tusha Krishnam. So Krishna Varnam Tusha Krishnam. That the incarnation, even though he's Krishna, but he's a Krishna, means he's not black in color. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's not black in color, he's golden in color. And he comes Sango Pangastra Parshadam. He comes with his followers. And what does he do? Yagger Sankirtana Prayer. So the yagya of Sankirtana is what he comes to spread. So in Kali Yuga, we cannot do fire sacrifices like people used to do in the other yugas. And for that, it has been simplified for us that the yagya in Kali Yuga is chanting. Okay? And Krishna says this in the 10th chapter also when he'll come, 10th chapter in the 25th, 26th verse, he'll say, Japa Nam, that I am in all the sacrifices, I am Japa, the chanting. So Krishna also confirms it. Mahaprabhu came and spread it. Okay. So now why do we have to do yajna? Okay. To attain the goal of Krishna Prema. So that is why sacrifice is needed. And to live a life that is conducive for spiritual practices, for our spiritual growth. Right. And how do we do this yajna of chanting? So who's the priest? I am the priest. What is the ladle by which we are doing the offering? That's my tongue. And what is the offering? That's the mantra. All right. And what is the fire? The fire is concentration, attention, my consciousness, right? So we are producing sound and putting it in our consciousness as an oblation. Okay. And what do we get after this yajna is the purification of heart, right? Obviously, the purification of heart is just not my goal. My goal is Krishna Prema that eventually comes, right? And the reason Krishna brings it up here at this point is that we need some means to convert matter to spirit. As I was saying that there is matter all around us, right? Water everywhere, not a drop to drink. So similarly, there's matter all around me, but I should know how to use it for spiritual purposes. And that's why Krishna is bringing out this concept of yajna, and he's teaching us how do we do that yajna part. Okay. So we have this magic wand, which is our yajna, the chanting, mantra, meditation. And by this magic wand, we can convert everything to spirituality, right? So in our acharyas also mentioned this verse as to how that Krishna is telling Arjun indirectly that I want you to perform a fire sacrifice, okay? But then I want you to perform a sacrifice. But then Arjun in his mind has the concept that, sacrifice means a fire sacrifice. And Arjun is confused that, I've never heard of any kind of sacrifice. But, how can you expect me to do sacrifice in the middle of a battlefield? So now Krishna is explaining to him that the sacrifice is this whole battlefield of Kurukshetra. That is Kurukshetra is the Yagyasthali, and your bow and arrow is the ladle, and the korvas are the ghee that you have to offer. So that kind of thing, right? So then Arjun is confused. I've never heard of this kind of yajna. So he's confused. He's kind of thinking that Krishna is just trying to trick him into this. But then Krishna says, you never heard of it? Let me tell you, there are so many kinds of yajnas. And that's what the verses 25 to 33 will talk about. Different types of sacrifices. That's what Krishna will talk about. Right? So Arjun, as I said, Arjun could think that, I've never heard of this kind of a yajna. If you want me to perform yajna, I'll go to the forest and call a priest and so forth. So, but no, Krishna is telling him this battlefield is the yajna. It's Yagyasthali that you have to do the offering. So in general, in a broader perspective, Krishna is saying yajna is a principle. It's not just one specific activity. When we are acting for Krishna, everything can become a yajna. Right? When we are discussing Krishna, so what we are doing right now, we are discussing about Krishna. We are doing yajna. We are offering our consciousness by speaking and by hearing, and Krishna is manifesting as sound. Right? So everything is becoming spiritual in this process. Right? So anything done in this in such a transcendental consciousness is called a yajna. Okay, so that's the essence of this chapter. Now let's see if Prabhupada is highlighting. Okay, so Prabhupada gives a very good example here, that a patient who is suffering from a disorder of bowels due to overindulgence in milk products is cured by another milk product, namely curd. The materially absorbed conditioned soul can be cured by Krishna consciousness as set forth here in the Gita. This process is generally known as yajna, or activities, sacrifices, simply meant for the satisfaction of Vishnu or Krishna. The more the activities of the material world are performed in Krishna consciousness or for Vishnu only, the more the atmosphere becomes spiritualized by complete absorption. So the same activities that were entangling for us, which were like knots in our heart, the knots get opened up when we use them for Krishna. Right? Bhidyate Hirdaya Granthis Chidyate Sarva Samshaya. First canto of Bhagavatam, second chapter. This is talked about, that how the knots of the heart are opened up when we do everything for Krishna's service. Okay, so and then we attain complete absorption. The samadhina state comes. Okay. Okay, so now from here onwards, Krishna will talk about many different kinds of yajnas. Okay, but before we go into that, there are many different kinds of. Where's my sheet? Oh, where did I go? Okay, yes. So there are different categories of yajna. But I just wanted to give you this overview so that we don't get confused when we go into the details of the following verses. Okay, so there are different categories of yajna that Krishna is going to talk about. Not necessarily in this order. I put it in this order just to show you in hierarchy that that each one of, like for example, Dravya is the lowest form, then comes Kaya is better than that, and Mana is better than that, and so on and so forth. So Dravya means matter. Okay, Kaya means body, this body that I have, and then comes Mana, mind. Then Buddhi is intelligence, and then soul proper. Right. So there are different categories of yajna. So to get transcendental knowledge, there are various types of yajnas that we can do, and the topmost, the soul and the buddhi level, is the best. Right. So dravya yajna. So dravya yajna can be anything like, for example, charity. Right. We give away money, food, clothing. That can be dravya yajna. We are giving out matter. Then kaya yajna, when I use my body for something, it is volunteering. We go out volunteer for things. Then manomaya yajna is we offer our mind, right? We offer our knowledge, our mental skills, right, for Krishna. There are so many life coaches out there, management coaches. So obviously they're not using their skills for Krishna service, but they're offering their mind for some purpose. No, they're not doing it for Krishna. Then topmost is intelligence, and soul yajna is sacrifice of the ego, right? So from false ego, we go to true ego, right? Doing everything for Krishna's service. So broadly, all the yajnas that Krishna is going to talk about from here till verse 29 are under this categories in some form or the other. Okay. So the series will begin here. We're not going to spend an enormous amount of time here. The verses 44.25, 25 to 29, they're complex enough that we can spend our entire lives in there. And they're simple enough that you would just understand by an overview. It depends on us how much time we want to spend here. And that's why I gave a summary also here, what each one of them is talking about, all the way from 25 to 29. So we'll go over these verses And but as I said, they are they're meant to take us towards Krishna consciousness. But if you're already in Krishna consciousness, you're a practicing devotee, as you all are. We don't have to go through all of them. But that doesn't mean we ignore them if an opportunity comes, but then it doesn't mean we depend upon them. So just keep that in mind. So let's just see what all is there in these ones. 25. Some yogis perfectly worship the demigods by offering different sacrifices to them, and some of them offer sacrifices in the fire of Supreme Brahman. Okay, so first one that Krishna is talking about is offering to devatas. And that's a simple one, right? Many jivas go to devata. There are so many devatas. Durga Puja, Ganpati, each has a specific blessing they can offer, right? Vidyarthi labhate vidyam, dhanarthi labhyam dhana, putrarthi labhyam putra, moksharthi labham gatim, japet Ganpati stotram, shabdir maase phalam labhet. There's this Ganpati stotram that you can read where it said that the people who are trying to gain knowledge can get knowledge, who are trying to get money can get money by chanting, Ganpati's stotra, Ganpati stotra for 6 months, and they will get it. So there are different ones. I just wanted to give one example, but there are many such ones where we can approach demigods for that. So those people who approach demigods, they're not perfect, but it's at least they're better than others who are living a animalistic life where they think that they are in control. At least these people have accepted that, okay, at least we are not in control. There's somebody superior. Okay. So then comes, that's the first one that Krishna is talking about. And the next one is Yogina Pariyupasate. Yogina, mystics Pariyupasate. They worship Brahmagna Apari Yagyam, Yagge Naivo Upjahavati. Okay. So next line is about Karma Yogis, right? Who perform dutiful detached work. Right? So that's the second category that Krishna is talking about. And then comes Brahmagno Apariyagya. Right? Apariyagya is Jnana Yoga. Right? And then last one is Yagge Naivo. So sacrifice, which is, yeah. So Krishna is giving many of them here. So demigod worship, he's talking about karma yogis, he's talking about jnana yogis, and then so that's the last one. So jnana yogi. So Krishna is giving a kind of a prelude, a trailer to what's going to come up in the other following verses, right? That there'll be different jnana yogis, and there could be a mix of them. So that's it. And then as this verse is telling us, some of them offer sacrifices in the fire of Supreme Brahman, right? So some people conceptualize that Brahman is supreme, and then they have to merge in it. Impersonalism, we have talked about it, right? So so those kind of activities are being highlighted here. Let's see what Prabhupada is saying here. Those who are interested in material benefits worship demigods. They are called Bahu Ishvaravadi. Others who worship the impersonal feature of absolute truth sacrifice their individual selves and thus end their individual existence by merging into the existence of the Supreme. So the impersonalists who always want to go and merge in the Brahma Jyoti, so that's the other category. So they're sacrificing their own individual existence. That's what is being talked about also here. See anything? Yes. So that's what it is. So offering self to Brahman and Karma Yoga and Devatas. So there were some of these categories that Krishna is bringing up here in this verse. Okay. In the next verse, 26. Some, the unadulterated brahmacharis, sacrifice the hearing process and the senses in the fire of mental control. And others, the regulated householders, sacrifice the objects of the senses, the fire of the senses. Now here, two kinds of people are being talked about. Unadulterated brahmacharis and regulated householders. So, Shrotadin Indriyani anne, And then, so this one is Samyag Agnishu, there is Indriya Agnishu. There are two of these Agnis that are they're offered to Agni. So we'll talk about it in detail a bit. So Krishna is talking about a brahmachari and a grasta here. So first line is Shruta Di Adi. Okay, Shruta, Shrutra Di, Shrutra Di. So Shrutra Adini, such as hearing process. So the word Shrutra means hearing, right? In the 15th chapter, when we reach there, Krishna mentions about these five senses, right? Shrotram, Chakshu, Sparshanam cha, Rasanam, Grahanam, Eva cha. It's 15.8. So Shrotra, hearing, Shrotra, Chakshu, seeing, Sparshanam, touch, Grahanam, tongue, Rasanam, tongue, Grahanam, nose. So the five. So when Krishna says Shrotra Adini, so he's saying Shrotra, the hearing process, and the other different senses. So there are five senses that I just mentioned about. Okay. So that's includes other ones also. So for a brahmachari, it is he's making a sacrifice, and where he's doing self-control. He's practicing self-control, right? So senses always want to run to their sense objects, but a brahmachari stops them. So, and how does he do that? By absorbing himself in Vedic sound. There are Vaishnava songs, there are Guru's instructions, there's Mahamantra, and he's always doing service. Right? So you learn, you hear, and then you do service. And a brahmachari is completely engaged in that fully, 24/7. Right? So that's why in ISKCON, brahmacharya is a very strong, they're very strong, not strong, they're very strict standards of brahmacharya in ISKCON. I was talking to a brahmachari a few days ago, and he was telling me how if they cannot say no to any service that they're being asked to do. If they say no, they can be asked to leave the temple. And secondly, they cannot miss Mangalarti. So they're very strict standards for ISKCON. So they are giving up all, they're sacrificing all their senses. So the senses never interact with the sense objects for them. Right? So specifically, Krishna is mentioning Shrotra here, hearing process. Right? So why? Because hearing is the most important process. Prabhupada has stressed so much on hearing, that hear. So for a brahmachari, what it means, Shrotadin Indiyani. So what he does is, metaphorically, they turn their ears inwards. Right? So the basic principle of sacrifice is that whatever can be used for myself, I use it for Krishna's pleasure. So I can use these ears for hearing so many things, movie, music, so on and so forth, gossip. But when we turn inwards and offer ears in a fire of mental restraint, then we don't hear any mundane sound, right? We use mind to control what we will hear, right? That is what unadulterated brahmacharis do. In the Vedic culture, there are two types of brahmacharis, and ISKCON practices are standard also. The first one is a Upakurvarna. So the Upakurvarna brahmachari is the one who practices brahmacharya for a few years, but then after that, he goes out, marries, and becomes a grasta. Okay, so that is a Upakurvarna. Upakurvarna. But then the other brahmacharis, Naishtiki brahmacharis. Naishtiki brahmacharis are those who are lifelong celibates, who never go from brahmacharya to grastashram. Many temples, some deities are just taken whole soul care by Naishtiki brahmacharis. Okay. For example, the Narsingh Dev deity in Mayapur, they are Naishtiki brahmacharis who take care of the deity of Narsingh Dev, serve the Narsingh Dev deity there. So there are different types of brahmacharis, and they offer their hearing process and their other senses also in mental restraint. Okay. Now the next part that is being talked about here is grastashram. Okay. Now the householders, as I know all of you are householders, the householder has to deal with Vishaya. What is Vishaya? Vishayan. Here it's being said Vishayan. So Vishayan is objects of sense gratification. Prabhupada has translated as objects of sense gratification. So a grahastha ashram person, he or she, they have to deal with the sense objects. Like a brahmachari just cuts off the connection between a sense and sense object, but a grahastha cannot do that. A grahastha has to enjoy, but in a controlled manner, which is even more difficult than a brahmachari. Okay, it's just like as if somebody takes your favorite sweet dish, like rasgulla, gulab jamun, and they put it on your tongue, but they tell you not to eat it. So that's the way a grahastha ashram person is, right? So that is why grahastha comes superior in the hierarchy of the Vedic culture. Brahmacharya, grahastha, vanprastha, sannyas ashram, right? Job description is of a higher nature. And in a broader sense, if there are no grahastha ashram people, then where will brahmacharis come from? That is why grahastha ashram sits above, right? So here it's indriyagni, okay, the fire of sense enjoyment. Earlier it was samyagagni. Samyagagni. Samya means control. There is a mental restraint. In grahastha ashram, there is indriyagni, that there is sense enjoyment, but it's in a controlled fashion, right? Dharma viruddho bhuteshu kamosmi bhartarshaba. Krishna says this in the 7th chapter, that I am sex enjoyment, which is according to Vedic culture, where we are engaging in sex, in sexual intercourse only to bring out children who are going to be devotees of Krishna. Okay, so that is okay. That is considered. So that's a very difficult task to do. So that's the other sacrifice that is being talked about. Okay, so these two are being talked about in this verse: a brahmachari and a grahastha ashram. Okay? All this is very complicated, as I said before I went into this. So don't worry, you chant Hare Krishna. If you take care of chanting Hare Krishna will take care of you. So don't worry about knowing these in depth. That's why I said before I went there, it's enormous complexity. We don't have to know all this. It's just so that, okay, we know this is being discussed in Bhagavad Gita, but you don't have to take it to your heart and understand it in detail, right? Prabhupada says this in the 2nd canto of Bhagavatam, that all the stipulated energies synchronized in this entire universe, right? They come to the help of the person who is chanting sincerely. They're available from all sources. So all this sacrifice, all these restraint and everything, you can put aside that. But remember that Prabhupada has told us that all the stipulated energies synchronized in this creation are available to us, right? So that's what to remember. I just want to again bring this out so that you don't get intimidated by the complexity of this section, right? So sacrifice in general just means that whatever we could use for our own sense gratification, we offer it to Krishna, and we take the remnants of that, right? So we as householders offer our regulation of senses. Somebody is offering their control, mental control. So all that is, but then don't worry about the complexity here. Okay, so 26. Let's see what Prabhupada is saying. Okay, this we talked about. We talked about restricted sex enjoyment. Okay, coming to 27. Others who are interested in achieving self-realization through control of the mind and senses offer the functions of all the senses and of the life breath as oblations into the fire of the controlled mind. Okay. So now you notice that this is the sacrifice of senses and life breath. Earlier it was sacrifice of sense objects, little more subtle here, right? Prabhupada in the purport talks about a couple of things here. He talks of pratyagatma and paragatma, okay, which he's bringing out the concept of Ashtanga Yoga from Patanjali here. So the soul attached to sense enjoyment is called paragatma, but when the soul becomes detached, it becomes pratyagatma, and that's something Prabhupada is bringing out here. Let's see. Okay, right. So in the complexity of Ashtanga Yoga is that it cannot be practiced in today's world, right? Not by living in cities, not by living as householders, working jobs. Ashtanga yoga means we have to deny every form of entertainment, right? So this verse, they are talking about life breath. So you're actually controlling your breath, which is a very, very complicated kind of process, right? You all must have done pranayama at some point or the other, and there is this concept of taking breath in, and then I think Prabhupada did talk about, he might be talking about in the next verse, but we take air in, we stop it for some time, we kind of hold it, and then we let go. So there's all the activities of those pranas are offered, right? So that's what is being talked about here. So the idea is to turn breathing inwards, meaning use the regulation of breathing to turn the consciousness inwards, right? In Pratyahara is one of those stages that come in the Ashtanga yoga where all the senses are cut off, right? So Parag outwards, Pratyag inwards, right? And so Prabhupada is talking about the 5 Vayus here because the pranas, they're controlled by those 5 Vayus. And Prabhupada talks about those Vayus here. Is that Pran Vayu, Vayan Vayu, Dhyan Vayu, Saman Vayu, Apan Vayu, and they all have different functions. Right? So that's what this one is. But this one is primarily achieving self-realization through control primarily of the prana, which is the basic concept of Ashtanga yoga. And then by that control, you're achieving self-realization. So that's also kind of sacrifice, but it's very impractical in today's world. We cannot do that. And Krishna himself will confirm that in the later chapters. He'll mention that. So that's what is being talked about in this verse. 28. Dravya yagyas tapo yagya yoga yagyas tathapare swadhyaya jnana yagyascha yataya samshita vrataha. Having accepted strict vows, some become enlightened by sacrificing their possessions, and others by performing severe austerities, by practicing the yoga of eightfold mysticism, or by studying the Vedas to advance in transcendental knowledge. Okay, so now there are many different types of yagyas being talked about here. Davya, Tapo, Swadhyaya. 3 of them are being talked about. There's Yoga Yagya also. 4 yagyas are being talked about here. In this one section, Krishna is talking about 4 different kind of yagyas. So dravya, as I said, matter, right? Wealth, for example. Tapo yagya is like austerities, fasting, ekadashi, 4 regulative principles. Swadhyaya yagya is sacrifice of intelligence that we talked about, right? So what are they actually doing? They're trying to connect to the absolute truth by sacrificing what's accessible to them, right? And Prabhupada is giving examples of all of them here. Dravya, he's talking about dravya, distributing food, opening up charitable institutions. That's dravya yagya, right? Giving up sacrifices of the comfort of life, tapo yagya. And for example, Prabhupada talks about chaturmasya. So chaturmasya is a 4-month period where a practitioner doesn't leave the home and doesn't shave, and he eats off the ground with his hands in the back, and whatever he can eat in one go, like, once you have bent down and you're eating, once you come up, you cannot eat anymore. So it's a very, very austere process. So that kind of austerity, tapo yagya, that's another kind of austerity. Then others who practice hatha yoga, mystic yogas, there are others also. And some travel to all sanctified places of pilgrimage. All these practices are called yoga yagya, sacrifice for a certain type of perfection in the material world. There are others who engage themselves in the studies of different Vedic literatures, Vedantas, Upanishads, so forth, and they are called Swadhyaya Yagya, engagement in the sacrifice of studies, right? So there are different, many types are being talked about. So Prabhupada doesn't go into the details of, he did, Tapu, oh yeah, he talked about all the 4 yagyas that are being brought out there. Yeah, so there are different kind of yagya again being highlighted here. Okay, so it's coming to 29. So you will see one thing, a technical aspect here. You will see there are 6 lines here. As you all know, the Bhagavad Gita is a song of God. Krishna didn't speak it as chapter-wise nor verse-wise. So Prabhupada, just to bring out the essence, to club the essence of verses, he's taken up the half verse of the next and pushed it here, just to based on continuity of the thought. That's what he does. That's all acharyas can do that. Okay. Still, others who are inclined to the process of breath restraint to remain in trance practice by offering the movement of the outgoing breath into the incoming and the incoming breath into the outgoing, and thus at last remain in trance, stopping all breathing. Other, curtailing the eating process, offer the outgoing breath into itself as a sacrifice. So here now two of them are being talked about. One is again now controlling the breath here, and then the other aspect is eating aspect, controlling food habits. Food habit, we know Krishna also talks about it in the 6th chapter, yuktahara viharasya yukta chetasya karmanu. Yeah, that being regulated in habits of eating, sleeping, recreation, and work, and that's kind of a yoga system that Krishna is highlighting here. So, and Prabhupada is talking about the pranayam yogi. So where he's talking about, right, okay, he's saying that inhaled breath is called rechak, and the so rechak is taking in, and I don't know what's the other name. Prabhupada didn't say that. And then when both of those, the taking in and giving out, when they're stopped, one is said to be kumbhaka, right? So by practice of kumbhaka, there are still many yogis who can control their breath. I know I've read about yogis who can stop their heart at their own will for a long duration. So there are yogis who have done that by practicing. So that's another kind of yagya to attain self-realization. Then reducing the eating process, so more self-control. So yeah, okay. So these are some of the yagyas that Krishna has talked about, and there's again going back to the summary here, starting with the 44.25, demigods offering to demigods, Atma, Jnana Yoga. Then we talked about brahmacharis, grahastha ashrams. We talked about restraining the senses in the prana, practice of severe vows, which included, tapo yagya, which included then controlling the breath and restraining the eating. So these are the yagyas that can be performed. And Krishna is just giving all of these to convince Arjun that yagya is not just sitting in front of fire and offering ghee to it. This battlefield can be a yagya for you, and you can do a sacrifice to Vishnu by killing the opposite party, which is the Kauravas. So those are the different kind of yagyas. I'll take a pause here and see if anybody has any thoughts around these, what we have talked about.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. So
Hare Krishna.
Back to verse 26. I know you say this is complex, but I guess a practical tip that or practical tips that I'm seeking from you is like when you were saying that we shouldn't hear mundane talks and you use our mind to control. So when we're in our devotee community and some of the mundane talks come up, I mean, we walk away, or sometimes it's difficult to walk away. So can you share some tips on how to control it that way?
It's difficult to walk away. So what you're saying?
Yes. I mean, if you're in a small circle and it's you have to sit and
Yeah. Well, if you it's in your hands, right? You can change the subject. You can always change the subject of what the discussion is, or you can walk out. I'll give you what happened once. I was talking to a senior devotee, and me being me, I started criticizing somebody, and that next moment, the person whom I was talking to, he just suddenly said that, oh, I have to meet somebody urgently right now, and he just took off. And I didn't realize it for many years that why he took off was because he didn't want to indulge in the discussion that I was having. And I appreciated that. So yes, it takes some courage to stand up and walk away. You can make some excuse and walk away, or just don't contribute. I was talking to some people, some a few weeks ago, and they started talking about politics, and I just stood up, or I just kept quiet. I just after from some time I just stood up and started to move away, and they knew that I was not interested in that kind of discussion. So you have to kind of put your foot down at some places, that that I'm not going to be subjected to this. So it's in your control to a good extent. Sometimes it can be your family members, some very close relatives of yours that are doing this. So take that as a sacrifice, that when don't indulge in it internally, but externally you can show that you're getting involved, but internally you can understand that I have a purpose behind this. I don't want to annoy my family, or I see that there is some future prospect by which I might be able to help them. So I don't want to push them away. So it's something that you have to judge by your own at every point, at how much of my true self do I want to show here. If it's a community of devotees and you feel that, oh, we shouldn't be doing this, you can change the subject. You can ask, oh, let's read something. Many of those people will just walk away when you'll talk about reading Bhagavatam or Chaitanya Charitamrita. Or you can just walk away on a pretext that I have something urgent that I have to attend to. So it's all in our hands, Mataji. But to think that such kind of people will not show up in your lives, that kind of utopia is Prabhupada prohibits us to expect that. So some thoughts there.
Yes, Prabhu. So yeah, just reflecting back, my aunt called me, and she was going on and on, and I remained silent. And I think I stopped receiving calls from her because I think she's upset at me. So in a way, it's a fine line to how to handle certain situations.
Yeah, it is a fine line. And at some point, what will happen is that some people will get annoyed, and you can't do anything about it. I'm not going to be a people pleaser, because I have something to do. I have a goal in my life. And if some people don't appreciate it, don't want a part of it, that's fine. This is who I am. You don't want to stand with me, fine, you can walk away. You might have noticed in your life, Madhaji, when you started bhakti, many of your friends must just fallen off the radar. They stopped calling you, they stopped hanging out with you. Many of my friends left away. But then some of my friends stood strong with me, and they are friends till today even. So it can help you both ways, refine your association, kind of letting the ones that are not much helpful fall off. And it's okay. You just live with it. You cannot please everybody. But some people you might have to please, might be your close ones. I went to India, I was there, and I was with my parents, and my father thinks differently about ISKCON and related activities that we perform. And I was there with him. I had to be with him. He used to watch news the whole day. Now the TV was on, and I cannot tell him to shut off the TV. It's his house. I would say it sometimes, but then I have to just adjust with it some way or the other. Um, try to engage him in something. I sat down one day and I told him the whole story of Hiranyakashipu and Prahlad. That took me like an hour. So I could save 1 hour of watching that useless news. So yeah, you have just to be innovative about it and see how you can avoid all that.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu.
You're welcome. Any more thoughts, anyone? Okay. This is 2023. I went out. Oops. Missed the chapter. Yes, okay. So coming to 30. So now what we read till now, 25 to 29, were different forms of yajna. Now 30, 31, 30, 31, 32, 33, these four. 34th verse is a very important verse. I wouldn't kick off that one today, but 30 to 33 we'll discuss it. These are more of the principles and the outcome. Okay. For example, if you read the 30th verse, all these performers who know the meaning of sacrifice become cleansed of sinful reactions, and having tasted the nectar of the results of sacrifices, they advance toward the supreme eternal atmosphere. So this is the outcome of sacrifices. What happens when somebody continues to practice this process of sacrifice, right? The purpose of these yajnas. So what is the primary result that Krishna is talking about here? The Yagya Shapita Kalmasha and Yagya Shishtamrita. So these are the two outcomes. So the two. Yeah, Yagya Shapita Kalmasha and Yagya Shishtamrito Bhujo. Okay. And third, there's three actually. Yes. Sorry. Yanti Brahma Sanatanam. Okay. So there are three results. These are the three outcome. So the primary result is Yanti Brahma Sanatanam. That's the primary result. You attain spiritual nature. Sanatanam. So what does the word Sanatana means? No beginning or end. Right. So that's the primary result of practicing these yajnas in any form. And as I said, and I repeat myself, we all don't have to indulge in these yajnas. If needed, we have to. We are not going to shy away from them. At some point, it might come. You might have to give charity in some form. You might be with your parents and they might ask you to offer prayers to Lakshmi. It's Diwali. You might have to do it. So we don't become just completely give them up also. But then we in our hearts and deep heart of our hearts, we know that this concept of yajna for us is chanting. And Krishna has said that, Mahaprabhu has taught us that, Prabhupada has established it for us, and we are fully convinced. So for us, yajna is that. But for others who are practicing, they also attain the spiritual nature, but then for them, the path is very, very long, complex, and sometimes they don't even attain the goal. So the primary result of practicing these yajnas is attaining spiritual nature, Sanatanam, right? The secondary results are these two, Yagya Shapita Kalmasha and Yagya Shishtamrita Bhujau. Right? All the dirt in our consciousness, kalmasha, right? Kalmasha, the word kalmasha, let's see what the word kalmasha is. Sinful reactions. So all the dirt in our heart is removed. Right? In India, you might have seen there is this advertisement for a detergent, right? That it removes the toughest stain. They show that a child has jumped into a pool of mud and then he comes back home and his mom just puts it into a so similarly, by practicing these yajnas, all the dirt is removed for us, right? It removes the toughest stains in our consciousness, right? So by our consciousness, by being in this world, by interacting with this world, where so many things that we're interacting with 24/7, there's so many impressions we are picking up. All those impressions can be removed by practicing yajna. Right? So this is the secondary result, which is Yagya Shapita Kalmasha. That's first part of it. The second part of the secondary result is Yagya Shishtamrita Bhujo. Right? Amrita Bhujo. Everything becomes Amrita Bhujo. So one tastes nectar in every step in life. Bhujo means to enjoy. The word Bhujo, let's see, where is that? Yes, Amrita is nectar. Tasted is enjoyed, right? So that's what Amrita Bhujao means. So Amrita Bhujao means they enjoy everything there. So when we chant Hare Krishna, when our mind becomes cleansed, we see this whole world as a paraphernalia for service of Lord. Everything is full of love, right? Earlier it was everything was full of lust, but now everything is full of love, right? That's the That's the demonstrative quality of a person who's fully engaged in Krishna consciousness. He's tasting that nectar 24/7. Evam vrata supriya nama kritya jatanurago drut chitta uchay. Hasati atho rodati roti gayati unmadvan nrityati lok bhaya. So, Karvajana Muni in the 11th canto, he says that by chanting the holy name of the Supreme Lord, when we come to when our heart is cleansed, then a devotee becomes so fixed in his vows and he becomes so attached to that name, to a particular form. Somebody might fall in love with the Narsingh Dev form of Krishna. Somebody might fall in love with Krishna as a baby. Somebody might fall in love with Krishna as as Gopal and so on and so forth. Right. So when the person is attracted to that form, that person's heart melts. Right. And that person will laugh out loud, he will cry, he'll shout, and sometimes he will sing, right? He might dance like a madman in a public. But then that person is fully enjoying the nectar. So that's the essence. That's the Amrita Bhujo that's being talked about here, right? And the verse I was quoting, Evam Vrata Supriya Nama Kritya Jatanurago Drutta Chitta Uche. The heart melts for that person. And that heart melts and it becomes like a river of rose apple juice. Okay. Rose apple? Yes, rose apple. Drutta Chitta Uche. Rose apple juice. And we have seen a live example of Prabhupada, at so many places. Prabhupada saw 70-year-olds playing golf and he started crying. He said, what are these guys doing? They spent their entire life running after money and family and so on and so forth. And now they have time and they're wasting it on hitting a ball around in a field. So for a pure devotee, his heart melts on seeing the suffering of others. And he's fully tasting the nectar in his or her heart, and he's 24/7 happy. When I had mentioned this in the earlier class, one of the discussions, that when the Juhu temple was being built, there was so much going on there. But Prabhupada was free. He was not at all concerned. He used to give classes. He would have heated discussions with contractors and landowners, so on and so forth. And then immediately after that, he'll come and give a class on Bhagavad, and he will be at peace. Because he's 24/7 tasting the nectar and he's fully dependent on Krishna for everything. And he or she sees everything as a paraphernalia for service of the Lord. Right? So, when our body, right, so body, mind, and words are used to serve Krishna, then the heart melts. As that's what we're being told. When we offer sacrifice, when we do the yajna with sincerity, as much as sincerity we can put in, then our heart melts. Then I'll be able to experience my relationship with Krishna. Right now, I cannot experience that relationship. Why? Because I'm burning in this forest fire of material world. And you cannot put out a forest fire with a bucket of water. You cannot even put out with a plane, right? There are planes that go up, then they drop water. No, only rain can end that fire, the forest fire that I'm suffering from, right? So, yeah. So if we know what the ultimate goal is, that our ultimate goal is Krishna, and we focused on that, then whatever changes come in our life, we tolerate them. So we do our yajna. If anything adverse comes, we tolerate it. And then eventually we reach the culmination of our practice, which is attaining pure heart. Heart melts, and then Krishna, we understand our relationship with Krishna, and purification happens in our heart. So, so all the natural affection that I have for material things get transferred to an affection to Krishna, right? So we all are. It's our duty to make our lives conducive for spiritual growth. We should do everything that complements our spiritual practices. But if we live a life that is not in favor of our spiritual practice, then we've got it backwards, right? So that's the basic concept that's coming out. Using everything for Krishna's service, And doing yajna properly, that's yajna for us is the chanting process that we have, doing it with the utmost sincerity as we can. And as I mentioned, Prabhupada has told us that when we chant sincerely, all these stipulated energies synchronized are available for us. All of them come together to help you in your mission to move forward in this bhakti process. So you are not alone. There are the entire universe's sources of power are coming to help you out when we practice bhakti. And Prabhupada talks about in one of the smaller books, Raj Vidya. In the second chapter, Prabhupada says that we should tell Krishna our distresses, what my distresses are. Sometimes we feel that, oh, Krishna would know what is going on in my life, or I don't, or you know, sometimes you even feel some people say, oh, I don't want to burden Krishna with my, I just want to love him. I don't want to burden him with my problems. But Prabhupada is still, no, you have to tell Krishna what your problems are. Tell him very clearly what your distresses is. And then when you tell that, it helps you move forward in that path. Then Krishna comes and helps you out so that we can do our chanting, the yajna properly. He comes and purifies from within. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajati priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamupyantite. Tesham anukampartham aham agyanajam tamah nashyami atma bodhasto jnana deepena bhasmata. So this is 10.10 and 10.11 of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is saying that I, from within the heart, I light a lamp of knowledge which burns the ignorance. When I move towards Krishna with love. So all that's what is being told here. That's the outcome of the process of yajnas that are being told here. Okay, so let's see what is Prabhupada telling us. It is found that common aim of all is to control the senses. Okay. Sense gratification is the root cause of material existence. Therefore, unless and until one is situated on a platform apart from sense gratification, there is no chance of being elevated to the eternal platform of full knowledge, full bliss, and full life. Yes, so he's saying that too much engagement and indulging too much in sense gratification is the root cause of our material existence. So why we have come here is because I had a desire to enjoy my senses. So that's what Prabhupada is telling us here. So we have come to Krishna consciousness to become Goswamis. We have not come here to become Godas, right? And there's always going to be a struggle, right? But once under control, then you can direct everything to Krishna by using everything for Krishna's service. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. Right? Using these senses to serve Krishna. Right? When we go out, right, the companies give so many perks to us, right? And the purpose, we have a gym, a fitness center, and probably a cafeteria, and everything is there. In my company, you can have your clothes dry cleaned, you can have your car serviced while you're at work. So many perks are there. What's the purpose of giving all those perks? So that we can be fully absorbed in working for the company, right? So, but if we don't give our complete self, we don't offer our complete self, then these amenities can be taken away also. And that's what happens in this cosmic management. That when we don't offer these yajnas, we see that the results start, the outcome, there's no more, blessings that come our way. There is so much of erratic climates happen, right? There's so much of erratic climate now. There's somewhere there is drought, there is flood somewhere, extreme colds, extreme summers. So that's what happens when yajnas are not offered. Okay? So that's what Prabhupada means, that all is that the common aim of all is to control the senses. So become Goswamis, not Godas. Then Prabhupada is saying that sense gratification is the root cause of material existence, right? So if you will notice that we all have senses, We all have senses conveniently located around our face, ears, nose. We talked about them. Shrotram, chakshu, sparshanam, rasanam, grahanam. We have all of those in there. So when we pour in transcendental knowledge, right, we are listening, hearing. But then through these openings in our body, we have 9 holes, but then the primary one, the eye and the ear. If we are engaging in sense gratification, all my transcendental knowledge is flowing out of that. So I don't retain anything. So if you have ever had this question, I get this all the time, that why can't I retain things? It's primarily because I'm too much engaged in sense gratification through these very same senses which are supposed to be used in Krishna's service. Right? So we have got a special gift. We have come in a human body. We should use it to the best of our capacity. So regulate senses, and then we retain, and we move upwards in the yoga cycle. Okay, so then comes 31, a smaller one, because Prabhupada moved a part of the verses up here in 29, right? So half of it he moved here. So now that's why one of the verses is just a part of it. It's not the complete thing. Nayam loko asti ayagyasya kuto anya kuru sattama. O best of the Kuru dynasty, without sacrifice, one can never live happily on this planet or in this life. What then of the next? Existence in the material world is due to multiple reactions to our sinful lives. Ignorance is the cause of all sinful life, and sinful life is the cause of one's dragging on in material existence. So, ignorance, sinful life, janma, cycle. That's the way it's been going on, right? Yeah. So that's the way it's been going on. Avidya, ignorance, is leading to pap. We do pap, and then pap leads to punarjanma. The cycle is going. Right. So as I was saying, this human birth is very valuable, right? Not to waste, not to be wasted. It's rare. Okay? A blind man, he's in a prison, and the blind man is always going around the walls by touching them, going all over the wall because he's blind. The door of his prison house opened once in a year. Okay. So a time came when he was very close to the door when it was open, but suddenly he had an itch in his back and he started itching himself and he kept walking and he missed that door. What that analogy is meant to teach me is that I have got an opportunity now that I have a human body, and I should not give up that opportunity because of an itch, because of a material desires, right? So I don't want to miss that opening, right? Don't want to miss this human birth by engaging in that itch. That is why this transcendental knowledge is crucial for us. And that is why we need to inquire about spiritual life. Parabhavas tavad abhodjata, abhodjata. Yavanna jigyatsa atma tattvatam. That as long as one does not inquire for spiritual value of life, one is defeated. Our purpose is defeated. And then we again go back into the cycle of miseries, which are coming primarily because of my ignorance. Yeah. And Prabhupada will, yes, okay, towards the end, he's saying, a life of Krishna consciousness is therefore the solution to all the problems of material existence. A very bold statement, a bold but a very true statement. So what spiritual life does, it gives us a bypass. We have been going on in a cycle of all miseries. But spiritual life comes and shows me that there's a completely another path that I can take. Right? So the root cause of all the material problems is avidya. Prabhupada has told us, we have read it many times from Prabhupada's books. When I get that knowledge, automatically all my problems go away. So what we have to understand is that all the problems that I'm suffering have been created by myself. Nobody else has created it. I have created it. Right? I've been looking for a promotion, and because my boss doesn't want to give me, I become frustrated. I start thinking, should I get another job? Should I, I can't do anything else other than getting a job. So I start thinking that way. And then when I go to another job, my misery is double there because my workload is so much that I cannot practice my bhakti properly. So all the material problems, they are created by myself, by my mind. Atmeva hi atmana bandhur, atmeva ripuratmana. My mind can be my best friend and my worst enemy. So the solution of all the material problems comes from bhakti. And because bhakti teaches me to detach myself from my mind, detach myself from all these senses and sense objects. That's what Prabhupada means here. That there is the Krishna consciousness, the solution. All these different type of sacrifice are approved by the Vedas, and all of them are born of different types of work. Knowing them as such, you will become liberated. Right? Different type of sacrifice, as discussed above, are mentioned in the Vedas to suit the different type of workers. Right? Arjun can ask that, why are there so many types of sacrifices? So Krishna is answering that because people are different. We all are different. Why is there a Apple phone and why are there Android phones? Because some people like Android, some people like Apple. Why do we have analog digital watch? Analog watches, digital watches. People prefer that. How people prefer smart watches. So the variety exists because of the different type of people around. Right? Oh, what is it? Okay. Yeah. Yes. So different types of yajnas, and the verse here being Brahmano Mukhe. The word that is being used here is Brahmano Mukhe. Where does it come from? Vitata. Vitata, where's the word Vitata? Spread. So it's coming from Brahmana Mukhe. Now the word Brahmana Mukhe, Prabhupada is translating it as Vedas. That's coming from Vedas. Brahmano can also be taken as coming from Brahma. Brahmano can also be taken as coming from Brahmans. Right? So Brahmanas used to teach Vedas to mankind. They're the spiritual teachers. So either way, it's coming from a source, from a legitimate bona fide source. And whatever is coming out of it, right? It's so it's saying that they're coming out, different sacrifices are coming out from the Vedas, Prabhupada is telling us, and they are born of different types of work. Different type of work means it could be based on either body, on your base of mind. We talked about those different, right? Dravya yagya, kaya yagya, manomaya yagya. So there are different types of yagyas. So they can be at different levels, right? People are different and might want to work with the body or with the mind or through words. So ultimately, all yajnas involve some work or the other. So correlation is that, Arjun, you should do your work. Right? When one understands this, that we have to do work, but the way to do work properly is to work as a sacrifice, then we will be liberated. Right? So ultimate purpose becomes liberation. Different type of works, yes. Okay. O chastiser of the enemy, the sacrifice performed in knowledge is better than the mere sacrifice of material possessions. After all, O son of Pritha, all sacrifices of work culminate in transcendental knowledge. The purpose of all sacrifices is to arrive at the status of complete knowledge, then to gain release from material miseries, and ultimately to engage in loving transcendental service to the Supreme Lord Krishna, consciousness. So we do sacrifice. Krishna from within my heart as a Chaitya Guru, he cleans my heart, helps me untie the knots, Vidyate Hirdaya Granthis, and then so he does that. Eventually, what does that lead to? Because now my mind is purified and I can see things as they are, I gain freedom from material miseries. Once I'm free from material miseries, then I know my true purpose. I have the fog has cleared out. The sun has come out, the fog's cleared. Then I understand that my true purpose is to serve Krishna. I understand my relationship with Krishna, and that is the ultimate state of liberation. That's the culmination of all the sacrifices, as Krishna is telling us. Right? That's the whole purpose here. So, Krishna is saying that there are, he's talked about different kind of yagyas. There is performed in knowledge. So, and then mere sacrifice of. So when we sacrifice with knowledge, with the understanding of the purpose behind it, it's more valuable than just doing mere material sacrifices of mere material possessions. People do dravya yagya, right? Okay, I do charity and also and so forth. But if I understand that my purpose is to serve Krishna, and even though I am a grahastha and I control my senses accordingly, that is a much higher level of sacrifice. That's what Krishna is telling here in this verse. Let's see what else is there. Rupal is saying. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yes. So from 25 to 29, we discussed various sections of yagyas. 30 to 33, we discussed the principle behind it, which includes the purpose also. The next one, for 34, is a very important verse, which Krishna in a culmination gives. How we behave, how do we do that? By serving a guru, right? Approaching a guru. So knowing what kind of yagya I should practice can be only told to me by a guru, right? And then he will impart knowledge. But we'll discuss this in detail next time. Okay, so this is done for today. Any thoughts, anyone, before we wrap up?
Prabhuji, just quick reflection. I was appreciating how you sharing that we're not able to retain because we're so much involved in sense gratification. So that's very something that I have to practice. Control sense gratification, and then we can start to learn to retain. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah, it begins from controlling our senses. I've heard this many times, and probably I also shared it with the team here. There are 4 levels where we work, and I think I heard Radhanath Maharaj say this. At the lowest level, we are unconscious incompetence. I'm so dumb that I even don't know how dumb I am. But then a time comes when I become conscious of my incompetence also. No, Prem Dham, this is not right. This is foolish of you. I'm not doing anything better, but I at least start knowing that I become conscious of my incompetence. And then I consciously try to be competent. That's the way the process goes. And then eventually it becomes unconscious competence. That I don't even know that I'm doing everything perfectly. And that's the whole process we have to walk through. And that only happens when we try to control our senses. Krishna is not asking us to become, fanatic about it. Oh, I have to control my senses. That's not the focus. Controlling my senses also has a purpose behind it. The purpose is to develop love of Krishna. So with that purpose in mind, we control our senses. Otherwise, the purpose is we don't have to control our senses. It doesn't help us in anything. Yeah. So there's a process, and when we understand that, then we are able to move forward on the path easily. And Krishna accepts us as we are. He says this across Bhagavad Gita in the 9th chapter, right? He says, Pratijani Kaunteya Name Bhaktya Pranashyati. Go ahead and tell everybody, Arjuna, my devotees never fall down. And then in the 11th canto, Krishna is talking to Uddhava. He says that again. Jata Shraddha Mat Kathasu Nirvinna Sarva Karmashu. That I won't go through this. 11th canto, 20th chapter, verse number 27 and 28. If you want to go read that, Krishna says that even though you are trying your best to control your senses and you cannot, still don't lament about it. You are still my devotee. You are still mine. So Krishna is just looking for the sincerity. That's all. Everything else he can pick up. Yeah.
Sorry, 11. I missed that. 11.
11th canto, chapter number 20, verse number 27 and 28.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Just a quick question, so we need to get rid of this, sinful reactions, right? When we start doing the chanting and all. So sinful reactions means we have a vikarma, akarma, and one is the pious, like karma, right? Pious activity. So basically, we need to move towards the akarma, it will take us to the where there is no reaction, right? That's our goal.
Yes, akarma is our goal.
Okay.
But we start with karma we don't do vikarma at all, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's
Completely
yeah,
avoid that. We
absolutely.
cannot just jump to a karma right away. We have to do that by our steady practice. That is why Prabhupada put us these 4 regulative principles, chanting 16 rounds, because they take us to the platform of akarma.
Okay.
Without that, it's
All right.
very, very hard for us to reach that level.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Okay, we'll wrap up then. I'll see you all next week. Hare Krishna.